to Freshly Forever, a podcast that gives you fascinating insights week after week. Here's your host, Vi Kumar.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode on podcast Freshly Forever. Today we have here with us Jenna Banks, and Jenna is a social entrepreneur, real estate investor, author, speaker, and self-love advocate. And we are here today to talk about everything self-love, and Jenna being such a huge proponent of that, I guess there can be no better person to help anyone build their self-esteem and worthiness by learning to love themselves more. So Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Vi. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, perfect. And so what in your language or definition is self-love, and why is it that you have chosen to highlight this?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, self-love is loving yourself, right? And it sounds very simple. And I think probably most everyone listening would say, well, I love myself. But it's really more than just that notion of loving yourself. It's so much more, because you could love yourself and still be everyone's errand runner. You could love yourself and still not go for your dream job. You could love yourself and still not know how to communicate your needs. It's not enough to love yourself. You have to love yourself more than your partner, more than your boss, more than your kids. And I know that might sound counterintuitive, especially if you're a mom. You think, right? Like, I should love my kids more than anyone else, including myself. But actually, that's the problem, is that we think that. And that's why I set out to write this book, because self-love, people think, but it sounds selfish. I should love myself more than my kids. That sounds selfish. That's the problem. That is the problem I wanted to address, is that it's not selfish. It's actually the best gift you could give to yourself and your kids and everyone around you, because when you love yourself more than anyone else, you fill up with your own beautiful love, your own beautiful power. One of my sayings is, your love is your power. When you fill up with your love or your power, you radiate love. You're full of love. You have so much more love to give to everyone else, but it starts with how much you love yourself.
Okay. So there's so much more to offer, and probably you can just add to all the positivity that can abound, right?
Yeah.
When you just know to appreciate yourself first.
Yeah.
And this book, I Love Me More, How to Find Happiness and Success Through Self-Love. And you are about to launch it very soon, correct? It's coming out on International Women's Day. Is that right?
Absolutely. March 8th. It's such a wonderful day to launch this book. I'm really excited for that.
Oh, I mean, equally, I think all of us are looking forward to that. So what are some ways you would say we sabotage this self-love? Because you are trying to help us understand here as to how one can build it, how one can kind of, bring their inner self, true sense of the inner self. So how do you think we tend to sabotage it, and how best can we just bring this out?
Absolutely. No, thanks for asking that question. That's a very important one, and something I address in the book. Before I even get into really how to fully love ourselves, I had to address some of the things that include this fear of selfishness syndrome and the sabotagers that we don't even realize that kind of prohibit us from really loving ourselves. One of those things is saying yes, like people pleasing, when we really want to say no, right? You know what that feels like. Like someone says, hey, can you help me with my resume today? Like it could be a family member, someone, a good friend, a coworker, whatever. And if you're used to people pleasing, you say yes, but inside there might be something inside of you saying, oh, I really need to go to my Pilates class today. Like I really wanted to have that time to take care of myself. And you don't honor that.
So it's a matter of learning to say no where you need to.
That is just one of the many saboteurs that we have that prohibit us from really loving ourselves. Because if you really think about it, when you deny yourself, I also call it self-abandonment. When you abandon your needs, when you don't prioritize them, again, it's about loving yourself more than others, not less than others. If you abandon yourself, what are you telling yourself? You're telling yourself that I don't matter to me, that my needs don't matter to me. Everybody else's needs matter more. That is one of them. Yet another one is just letting people cross your boundaries, not even being in tune with your boundaries. So for example, so let's say, imagine what a boundary crossing is. Okay. I'll give you a story if you don't mind, Vi. Do you mind if I get into a story? Okay.
Oh, please.
I'll give you one that will give a good example of how our boundaries are crossed constantly, almost on a daily basis, and we're not aware of it. Our friend,
your own story, your own background. I was going to get to that. So feel free to share this story that you want to highlight.
Thank
and of
you.
course, obviously feel free to add about your own background.
Okay.
I think that's impactful.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I'd be happy to. So my boundary story, just a quick about my background in a nutshell. What led me to write this book is because I didn't come from a place of self-love. I came from a place of self-loathing, lack of worth, lack of value, right? And this is what we're trying to cover in today's show, is really about how to value yourself, right? How to realize your own worth and value yourself more. So I didn't have any love for myself growing up. I was raised to self-sacrifice. What I thought didn't have any value or worth. I was raised in a very strict religious home. And so it was all about complying with the rules. And it was very oppressive. I ended up leaving home at the age of 14. I had enough and I just stood up for myself. It was the first time I really felt that I had value. I was like, gosh, I just want to stand up and protect myself and say, I'm not going to take this oppression anymore. Ended up in another home where it was just mentally abusive.
I'm so sorry. That's not a fun thing to have gone through.
It was pretty horrible. It was so bad that I ended up disconnecting from myself entirely to the point where I was numb. Like I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel happy, sad, bad, good. I felt nothing. And at that point I wanted to die. I didn't want to live anymore. And so I became suicidal. Had a few attempts and was almost successful in the last one. I was 17, landed in the hospital in a coma. And fortunately, I did survive. But, it was a long journey to start to really tune into myself and learn how to love myself. And that was the game changer for me. But it was a lifetime of journey, which is why I had to go back and think, how did I get to where I am today, which is a successful entrepreneur. I've written this book. I'm out speaking. I'm motivating others. I'm doing all these things. I sold my company for $500,000 in late 2019. I only have a GED for an education. I didn't have love from my parents. I didn't get to go to college, so I was able to do all the things that I've been able to do in life, despite the lack of love that came from my family, despite the horrible upbringing that I had, and just surviving, moving from surviving to actually thriving was my self-love journey. So that's the story of where I am today. But, I didn't know how to set boundaries, right? I grew up people pleasing. I grew up self-sacrificing. And, so here's my story about, what it looks like when your boundaries are getting crossed. Here's one of them. So I'm on social media a lot now, and I was not on social media at all until I started, probably like 2020. Before that, I had an Instagram page for a few years. It was very private, very, very private, just posted. I never had a Facebook page or anything like that. All of a sudden I'm on social media now, and an ex reaches out to me on social media, and he's like, I hadn't seen him and talked to him for like 20 plus years. And he says, hey, how's life? And I'm like, oh, great. Long time. And you go, how's everything with you? He's good. Cool. Like 2 sentence replies back and forth a couple of times. And I said, by the way, my boyfriend and I are great. I kind of threw that out there just in case he was digging or whatever. And then the conversation ended, and I was like, great. No big deal. I'm not trying to reignite that situation, and he'll go away probably for another 20 years. Well, the next thing he did was comment on a social media post as if he was a friend of mine, like as if we're now going to have this ongoing connection, right? And what I felt in my body, Vi, was like somebody just invaded my personal space.
Mm-hmm.
You know that feeling when someone just gets too close or they're in your stuff too much, or what you just feel like you're invaded. And that's what it felt like. And the old me, the old people pleasing me, the old nice girl me would have been like, he's not being mean. There's nothing wrong technically with what he's doing. I don't want to be the mean person. I'll let it slide. Right. And you just,
or not kind of judge, is kind of the thought process you may have.
yeah, you're like, he's not doing anything wrong. Like, I don't want to be mean. So I'll let it slide. Right. And you just let it go. And then they do it again and you keep letting it go. But meanwhile, you're not feeling comfortable with the situation. So what I did was I honored that feeling in my body. And this is what I talk a lot about is how do you even set boundaries when you're not used to it? You start with honoring that feeling in your body. So I had this feeling in my body, like that this intrusion was happening. So I tuned into that and I said, well, what does Jenna really want to do? What do I feel like doing right now? I feel like shutting the door, right? That's my true feeling. Instead of being the nice girl, old conditioning, old programming, I feel like shutting the door. So I opened up my DM, typed out a message to him that says, hey, by the way, I have no interest in being friends with you. We were never friends. I don't have an interest in being friends with you now. We had a tumultuous relationship. I ended it because it was not a happy one for me. I have no interest in reconnecting with you. And I thought about it. I was like, should I hit send? Should I hit send? And then I hit send. And when I hit the send button, it felt phenomenal. I felt like a power surge. And this is what I talk about is like, your love is your power. I'm showing myself that I love myself and I feel it in my body. It's like, feels great to protect yourself, stand up for yourself, honor yourself, be true to yourself.
And probably you felt like so much load off of your back.
Yeah.
Right?
I felt like I'm not going to take this. This is me standing up for me and I feel darn good about it. And that's the problem is that we've got so many, we've got this, what I call the nice girl syndrome, which most of us suffer from. We want to take care of everyone else's feelings. We feel responsible for them, right? Like it's my responsibility to make sure you feel okay. And I don't want you to think badly of me, or I don't want you to think I'm mean. So I'm going to be the nice girl, even if I'm not honoring myself. And so it's about flipping that switch. And that's why I call it a self-love saboteur. You're sabotaging your own self-love when you don't honor yourself.
So then what makes women sacrifice this importance that is kind of due to themselves? Is it kind of, how do you even overcome this?
It is social conditioning is what it is, right? It's what we're raised with this is how a woman is. This is how a man is. This is how we behave. Be the nice girl, be polite. We want everyone to like us. You want to make, especially with parents with our children, right? It's like, you make me look good, don't make me look bad. So behave. And we just get used to this being the nice girl. And I really think that it's rewiring our brains to, here's what I'm writing this article right now, and I'm really loving where I'm going with this, but it's about reframing what, instead of thinking, I want to be the nice girl, how about reframing it to this? I'm not being mean. I'm being nice to me. Right. And so it's about just reframing, taking a look at some of these conditions, this programming that we've been raised with, that were modeled all around us. Why do I sacrifice myself? Why am I not honoring myself? Well, what is this? And taking a hard look at it and saying, well, is this really what I want for me? Is this me being my best self? Is this me living to my fullest potential? Is this me loving myself more? Or is it just old conditioning that, because we've made so many changes. If you think about it, Vi, how far we've come as women in a very short amount of time, right? Like it was only back in 1974 that we got the right legally to have our own mortgage, our own credit cards, our own bank loan, right? Before that, we had to have a husband sign off on it. That wasn't that long ago. It was back in my life. That's in my history that happened. And, as women, we've come far, but we're still not living in an equal world. Why is that? But like, what I want to do is really take a hard look at why is that? Like, we should be, like questioning why. And part of the why to me is that, we as women still have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we need the opportunities opened up to us, and more of those are happening. But now I think that the job is on us. And I think it comes down to self-love.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you said, thinking about not being mean versus, oh, I need to do this. I need to do this.
Yeah.
So right there, I think you are kind of overcoming that roadblock, and you're kind of harnessing that power within yourself, and to kind of, value yourself and prove or kind of show who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's interesting. But when you wrote this book, Jenna, did it ever kind of come across like only women tend to do this? Or do you think, right from the age of, like a tender age, like even children, do they tend to kind of, does it start right at that age? What about women versus men?
Yeah.
How does all that come into the picture?
That's a very good question. It is not just women. There are some men, but it is mostly women. I've done a lot of research on this, and it is mostly women. There are some men, but I'm specifically, there are some men who need this message. I know some of them, but I'm more specialized to help with women because I know the hurdles we face as women. They are more specific to women, but there is also the nice guy syndrome. I know a few nice guys that really could use the same message. And I've actually helped some of them with it as well, because it's still, you need to love yourself, whether you're a man or a woman. It is no different. It's just men tend to love themselves more than women do. That's just the reality of the world we're living in. And when it comes to the children, I'm actually speaking to this with a brand new brand that I've launched with my partner called Tiger Feather. And this aims to kind of address this issue with the children, because it is, like you said, it is taught to us, right? It's modeled to us. Our parents teach us our morals, our values, and all these things. We grow up with them. So yeah, but as parents, it starts with us first being the change, right? And then we bring these principles to our children, and we say, hey, look, instead of saying, please me, do things to please me, how about teaching the children what pleases you? Because if we can teach our children to tune into what really pleases me, who am I really? And being okay with just like, hey, like one another saboteur of self-love is needing external validation, right? Which is another thing most of us are raised with. We are raised to look for the praise from others. Oh, if others
approval.
Approval. So if others approve of me, then I'm okay. But that is what keeps us distance from ourselves and sabotages our self-love, because you can't seek approval and be true to yourself at the same time.
And it's interesting, you say in your book, how you treat yourself is how you'll be treated by others.
Yeah.
And you call self-love to be this vitamin, right? So why don't you expand on that here for listeners? They can hear it firsthand from you.
Absolutely. I would be happy to share. If you think about it, and this is a concept I mean, most people don't know. If you think about it, like how I treat myself is how I will be treated by others. If you really let that settle in, it doesn't, at first you're like, how does that make sense? But think about it. If you respect yourself, you will get respect from others. It starts with self. You have to respect yourself.
So how do you demonstrate that?
So I'll give you a story. I lived in Silicon Valley shortly, and I'd moved there from Santa Monica, and I really wanted to get into the tech industry. And I know, Vi, you have that in your background as well. And I was like, I got hired as a business development executive at this consulting firm. I was basically like a month or two into the job. The company had actually been acquired by another company in Chennai, India.
Mm-hmm.
So the new president was flying in for the first time to come to the office, meet everybody. I'm one of the new kids on the block, right? I'm in the conference room. He comes into our meeting, sits at the head of the table. I happen to be sitting right next to him. And so before the meeting started, we chatted a little bit, got to know each other for a few minutes. My boss sits across from me. My colleague who had the same title as me sits right across from him, right next to him. So I'm facing them, right? So the new president looks at me and he says, Jenna, it'd be really nice to have some coffee right about now. Wouldn't you like some coffee? And I said, no, I'm good. I actually wouldn't like any coffee right now. I don't drink coffee this late in the day. And he looks at me funny and my boss stares at me and his mouth is literally gaping open. And I'm like, what? I don't understand what's happening. Why are you looking at me like that? I was literally clueless. So my colleague who's sitting next to my boss says to me, Jenna, you really like a Starbucks latte. I know you do. Wouldn't you like a Starbucks right about now? And I was like, no, actually, if I drink coffee this late in the day, I actually will be awake all night. I can't. So no, thanks. I'm good. And there was just silence in the air and I didn't understand. So then we go on, the meeting ends. I go to my cubicle. My colleague comes by and he says, hey, Jenna, would you mind showing me how to use the coffee machine in the kitchen? And I said, I don't know why you're asking me. I've never made coffee in there. It's usually made by the time I get here. So the coffee thing, I was like, what is going on with coffee? I don't understand. So the day ends. I go to my boss's office to say goodnight. I pop my head in the door and the new president's sitting there across him at his desk, but he's sitting, I'm standing. And he cranes he kind of looks up to the right and his neck has, he has to look up to me. And he's like, Jenna, I really look up to you. And I was like, I didn't know where this compliment was coming from. So I'm like, must be because I'm wearing heels, right? I threw in a little joke because no idea, right? And they laughed, I laughed, and then I left. And I go home and I'm thinking about this interaction. I'm like, what happened today? And I thinking about it, and I realized that they were fully expecting me to go get coffee.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted coffee. They needed coffee. And I'm a woman, and I guess they figured I'm a woman. I'm the newbie. I could go get them coffee, but I'm a biz dev executive. It's not my job description. I don't think I didn't need to get them coffee, and I didn't want coffee, so I didn't think about it. But
so right there, you had to push back on it to kind of stand up for yourself.
But I wasn't even consciously standing up for myself. What I was doing is I had a natural self-respect. If I didn't need coffee, so why would I go get coffee for them? I respected myself first, naturally, because that's what I've come to do through self-love. And as a result, I got respect. I ended up, they were giving me new accounts left and right, the biggest accounts. I hadn't even proven myself. I was still learning this whole technology field that I was getting into. So I got instant respect because I respected myself. And that is what I'm trying to kind of drive home with this story is it starts with you. When you value yourself, let's say you go for a job, right? You're applying for a job. And, back in the day, I don't know if they're doing this anymore, but back when I was going for jobs, they ask you well, what did you make in your what are you looking to make in this job here? And, let's say you say, well, I'm worth $120,000 base. You set your worth. It comes from you. If you're not sure, you say, well, am I worth it? Am I going to upset them if I ask for too much? And then, a lot of us women tend to kind of devalue ourselves. And so, but the worth starts with you. So if you want to be, if you want to be shown value in the external world, you have to value yourself more. If you want respect, you have to have self-respect. It all starts with how you treat yourself first.
Okay. And valuing, you said, and you also said, okay, kind of, if you devalue yourself, we just talked about that as well. So is this all coming from this reason, or do we get kind of caught in this cloud of imposter syndrome? Is that what is a reflection of sometimes someone not recognizing the need for self-love?
Imposter syndrome for me has popped up when I'm trying something new. Right. So it's happened to me usually when I start a new company or when I start for example, writing this book. When I wrote this book, when I started writing it, at first I was like so passionate. Yes, I'm going to write this book. And then I start researching and I'm reading other great works and I'm like, oh, that's when imposter syndrome kicked in, right? You're comparing. That's that comparison situation. I'm like, oh, I can't write as good as that. Why am I even going to go down this path of writing this book? Because there's so many writers that are so much better than me. And you could let that stop you. That imposter syndrome can certainly stop you. But I've learned that actually imposter syndrome happens and there's nothing, it's just part of trying something new. You've just got to know that comes with the territory of pushing yourself to new boundaries, new stretching new parts of yourself. And you're going to deal with imposter syndrome, but you have to like flip it and go to the self-love and the self-worth and say, you know what? No, I know I've got something to say. And there's
and kind of realize self-compassion is after all healthy and, it even can improve immunity, they say, right?
Yeah. There's science behind it. And that's what I include in the book as well. Not just my own stories and my own journey, but I include a lot of experts, a lot of data, a lot of science, studies, research that proves that, self-love actually is beneficial to our immune system. That's part of why it's life's vitamin, right? You power yourself up with your own love, your own energy. As you become more vibrant, you increase your immune system. You ward off more diseases. You don't have the anxiety and the stress and like all these mental health issues start to subside. It is really beneficial for your health.
Back in a moment with our guest on Freshly Forever. I think it can be a reflection of your confidence also at some point, right? The moment you start to accept yourself more, love yourself more, or just put in that wee bit of extra importance to yourself, I think giving that impetus is going to reflect in how confident you turn out to be as well in situations. I think that coffee incident that you talked about is a classic example, right?
Exactly.
You had to be confident enough to stand up for yourself, even without realizing. You didn't probably do it.
I didn't do it consciously. It was unconscious, which is the beautiful thing about that story. I love that about that so much is that I wasn't even conscious about it. And that's the goal. We should all want the goal to get there to where it's unconscious, because all these other behaviors that disempower us and that are not self-loving are unconscious as well. That we don't know what we're doing to sabotage our self-love. We don't know what we should be doing to love ourselves. And so it's about reprogramming, rewiring our brains to the point where it becomes unconscious and we choose ourselves first as the default.
Yeah. And probably when you reflected on it that night, it was time to give yourself a pat on the back, right?
Oh my goodness. I love that you said that. Yes, absolutely. Patting ourselves on the back is so important. I talk about that in the book. The opposite of that is the inner critic. And I know everyone listening right now probably has that inner critic voice that pops up way more often than the times that you pat yourself on the back. If you think about it, you're like, oh, I could have done that better. Oh, I should have done that. We're always bringing ourselves down instead of patting ourselves on the back. We think that that's cheesy or weird or whatever. But I'll tell you, if you just stop and recondition, again, it's about rewiring and making it unconscious. Like every little thing you do that you're proud of yourself for, stop, recognize it, and give yourself a little pat on the back. It's actually a really good vitamin lifter as well. You can feel it. You can feel it lift your spirit, lift your soul. Like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I made a really good dinner tonight. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. That was really tasty. Little things throughout your day. Once you get used to like being proud of the little things that you do, it starts to create a better, more positive self-talk within you.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought out that point about being the inner critic. Is that then the cause for us allowing society and social circumstances to dictate or guide our behavior?
I think that it's just programming, right? Like the inner critic is just something that most of us don't even talk about. Like I've never heard anyone really outwardly, like, there's no book on it. There's no show on it. Like, oh, this inner critic, there's no one shedding a spotlight on this thing. And most people probably don't even realize that everyone deals with the same thing. It's not just you with this inner critic, like, oh, well, that's just me. That's not just you. This is just something we all do, and it's not healthy. It's actually there's no good that we think it keeps us in line. It has a really demotivating effect on us. There's no good that comes out of the inner critic. And that's why I want to shed a light on that. I think that is its own like issue. But, social programming conditioning is something that, again, we're not usually conscious of. Like I have an interesting statistic for you, Vi. Did you know that we form 95% of our belief system by the time we're age 7?
Seriously?
Yeah, 7. Think about it. Did you have a choice in what you believe? If you formed 95% of what you believe about the world around you by the age of 7.
Hey, you're not even a second grader.
You never had a choice in your conditioning and your programming. So what I aim to do with this book is to shine a light on these things so that we can start to take control of that. Like, what do I really want to believe?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to benefit me? Do I want to go with this old social conditioning and programming that actually is disempowering for me? Or do I prefer stuff that actually is a life that I want to live, that's more authentic to me, that feels great, that honors me, that is more loving to myself, that I feel better when I practice this? Like, it needs to become a conscious practice to make it unconscious.
Okay. So how then do you tune into this inner energy and for you to become, say, powerful, successful, and, build your self-esteem?
That is I wish it was like, here's the answer and that's it. It takes a lot of work. And that's what I talk about in the book. It is a journey to get there. It's about understanding all the ways that we don't tune into ourselves and learning how to tune in and honor ourselves. And it is not easy. I failed miserably so many times. But you know what? That's where that self-compassion and self-forgiveness comes in, right? There's so many things to know about how to get there, and including the self-compassion and self-forgiveness, because you have to know that on your path to getting there, to tuning in and really honoring yourself, you're going to flop along the way. But you can call it failure. I don't call it failure. I call it trial and error. You just have to forgive yourself and learn, how could I do that better next time? Okay, next time I could stand, like, for example, boundary setting. For me, it took years to get to the point where I could, in the moment, recognize what I'm feeling and say, hey, you know what? You just crossed a boundary. I'm going to say this right here in the moment. And I'm going to make a more healthy, loving relationship right now between you and me. Between me and myself, I'm going to honor myself and I'm going to love myself more right now and honor that. And at the same time, I'm going to give you the benefit of being true to me. And now you're going to know the real me. And the real me doesn't like it when you talk to me like that. Or the real me doesn't appreciate when you say that. Or the real me doesn't like it when you touch me like that. That's honest. And that's a healthier place to come from.
Yeah, I think you can sort of say being politely honest is something that one needs to cultivate, right? Yeah. And you talked about workplace, that coffee incident, that's, yeah, I think it's going to resonate with so many people. It's a simple example, but it's a very powerful story. Yeah. What about personal finances? I think finance and women, like we always tend to think, oh, am I really, there? And there's so much self-doubt and, how does self-love come into the picture when it comes to, say, women building their financial worth? And you are someone that has been successful in, like you said, with a GED, you've run businesses and you have been successful to the point of selling it and improving your net worth. So what do you say to that, Jenna?
I love this quote by Susie Orman. She says, your self-worth determines your net worth. It's so good and so true. When I grew my self-worth, My net worth came with it. And you know what? My worth is not tied up in physical products and in material items, and that's one of the problems that is a self-love saboteur, right? That's seeking external validation through these material things like, oh, if I rock this Louis Vuitton purse, other people will validate me. They'll think whatever. But if you had to put that on a credit card, you should not, that's not self-love. It's not, because if you really think about it, what does that do for you? Well, it increases your stress because now you have this debt that you have to pay off, and you have to worry about the money, and now you have to work harder because you have these bills to pay off because you got these things. Is that self-love? Or is that stress and anxiety? If you really tuning in, what makes me feel good and what doesn't? You might get that instant kick when you get that purse at first. You're like, oh, I feel great about this. But then the reality, people don't look at the real reality of it. Are you really buying things to please does that really please you? Or are you doing it to please other people, to look good to other people, that external validation, right? I had to go through my own journey, my own financial journey to realize that self-love and finances are absolutely intertwined. Like, you need to love yourself to have really good financial health. And if you don't, then you're going to, again, be trying to keep up with the Joneses. Another example is, let's say, for example, our kids' college, right? Let's say there's a survey out there that I think it was like 75% of millennials think that it's more important to save for their kids' college funds than for their own retirement. That is scary. That is not self-love. Again, you have to love yourself more than everyone, including your children. I know it sounds selfish, but it's not, because your kids will benefit when mom and dad are in a safe, secure, sound, not stressed out financially place. Because if you think about it, one of the biggest stressors in relationships is finances. If mom and dad aren't stressed out about finances, the home environment's happier. Everyone benefits when you are financially secure. Overgiving to our children to make up for some kind of mom guilt is not self-love. So saving for your kids' their financial futures when you don't have your own financial future in order is not self-love, and it's not going to benefit them, and it's not going to benefit you.
Okay, so how then do you handle relationships as mom, as caregiver, yet not compromising on this aspect of self-love?
When you take care, so it's interesting. The more I, for example, took care of my own finances and got my financial house in order and was reaching my financial goals, I had so much more to give. It's like putting that oxygen mask on. They say on the plane, in case of emergency, put on your own oxygen mask and then help other people. You have to help yourself first. When you do that, you have the energy, you have the oxygen you need to really help from a truly energized place. If you're in a financial stress to help get your kids through college first, but it's stressing you out financially, that's not going to help anyone. There's other alternatives, right? You go to grants, you go to loan, you figure that out. But you got to be in a good place. When you start taking care of yourself and you build, then you start to get your savings going. You've got your 401k going. You've got your investments going. Now you take care of other people, right? But if you're not in a financially secure place, it's not going to benefit anybody.
So how then do you tap into this inner potential and then come to this aspect of realizing your inner worthiness goddess? That's how you refer to it in the book, correct?
Yes. And that is where Tiger Feather is going to come in, my new company that's about empowering women and girls with this message. It's knowing the values that you want to carry forward. It's taking this unconscious to the conscious and saying, what do I want for myself? Do I want better financial health? Do I want better relationships? Do I want more self-power? Do I want better jobs? Do I want to get paid more at work? Well, then let me do that inner work to get there and get my values aligned with my self-love. Let me love myself first so that everything else benefits from that. And Tiger Feather will really help to address some of that, because it's going to be more like a we're building, like right now, if you go to the website, tigerfeather.net, you see in the video, the problem. It's a 2-minute video that talks about the problem in society right now and how we're going to fix that through, hopefully through Tiger Feather. At least that's our mission anyways. And it's about just creating these new mantras for yourself, these new, this new mission statement for yourself, a new way of looking at the world and what you want for yourself. And but definitely the book covers so much of it. And I dive so deeply into all of the ways in which you can love yourself more. And like I said, it comes out March 8th. So I hope everyone listening will go in. And if you're in a place where you truly love yourself, that's fabulous. Help somebody else, because the world needs more empowered women loving themselves more. Our world would look so much different and so much better if we just had a world full of women and men and children who love themselves more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. So as takeaways from this conversation, Jenna, if there's one thing which you would like to see majority of the people out there change, something which you think is basically grossly incorrect, what would that be, and what would you like to see transformed into?
That self-love is not selfish. It is necessary. It's necessary. It's necessary for our health. It's necessary for our wealth. It's necessary for our children. It's not selfish. So that's the thinking of most women. That guilt kicks in, right? The guilt kicks in. You think about it. Oh, but if I take care of myself first, no, I'm going to feel guilty. I'll give one final takeaway that I think will be very fascinating for everyone listening today to really keep in mind, especially us women. Guilt is not an indication that you're doing something wrong. Guilt actually means you're going against a patterned condition.
Something that you're used to, but you are still aspiring to change.
That's right.
From within.
And yet we want to run away from the things that make us uncomfortable, or just get right back to what makes us comfortable, right? So we go, that's uncomfortable. It's selfish. That's guilt, right? And then we go, oh, let me get back into my lane because that's what I know and that's the better way. But guilt just means you're breaking a program. And if you're not willing to face that guilt and feel a little uncomfortable in the process of making positive change for yourself, it won't happen. So you have to be willing to go through some of the discomfort that it takes to start breaking these old patterns that aren't serving you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, great takeaway there. And why don't you tell listeners about your contact information and in your own words about the book, and we can just leave them with that thought there.
I would love to. Thank you for asking. The best way to get in touch with me is my website, which is jenna-banks.com. Because on there I have all the links to my social channels. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and my handle there is @JennaBanks.0. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I share content on all these platforms. So really good reminders just to, once you get the book, you're going to want to just keep those daily reminders going. And I try to keep that going so that you can just keep reminding yourself, yes, I want this new program, this new conditioning, the self-love is important. And it's really important to just kind of keep that going. It's not a one and done. You can't just read the book and be like, okay, I've got self-love. It's a practice. It's a doing. And so, the website. And then also, just about the book real quick. Again, I came from a place of self-loathing to a place where I love myself. I'm in love with myself. I can truly say that. And it meant all the difference in my life. I found my happiness and success through self-love, like the title of the book says. And I want that for every woman. I want that for everyone. But women in particular need this message more than ever right now. We need more empowered women loving themselves more. So I hope that you pick up this book or just find some self-love information out there. Even if you don't want to get the book, just start, if this is resonating with you at all, I encourage you just to do some research then, look into it and because it's really important. You deserve it. Your family deserves it. Your kids deserve it. Everyone around you deserves it.
Oh, what a great message. Congratulations. And your Instagram, I'm sure, is the best place for information, more information on this, rather than having to search anywhere else, I would say. And congratulations on the book and such a wonderful conversation. Once again, listeners, the book is coming out on International Women's Day. That's March 8th. And the title is I Love Me More, How to Find Happiness and Success Through Self-Love. So nice talking to you, Jenna, and look forward to catching up again in the future.
Oh, same here. I love this conversation so much. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Oh, anytime. As always, follow the podcast, leave a review from your podcast app of choice, and follow me on Instagram at YPKumar for all things digital media and lifestyle. I will see you back again with yet another guest and yet another interesting topic. Until then, it's Vi saying so long.